Hey, this is Nathan, and you were live in Liberty Village. Last week, I didn't get out as many videos as I wanted to, but I wanted to come back to you with this kind of a worldview analysis from a Christian worldview, kind of thinking about the horror movie called The Babadook. This is a movie filmed by Jennifer Kent and starring Essie Davis as Amelia, the main character. Essie and her son, as we know, are dealing with the loss of her husband. Essie's husband died 7 years earlier in a tragic accident, and so the movie goes that her son is kicked out of school because he's exhibiting increasingly violent behavior. He's talking about a monster being in the house, and he's often downstairs playing with magic tricks, not like real magic, doing illusions, and trying to kind of capture something of what it was to know his father, because he's never known his father. He was born on the night that his father died in this accident. So it's a really tragic story. So following the cues of Brian Godawa and his talk on horror and the Christian worldview, I'm going to split this up into 4 parts, and I want them to be all just a little over a minute. So bear with me, listen, and hope you enjoy. The first is this. This movie really deals with original sin in a unique way. The reason I say that is because Amelia is struggling with her own sinful reaction, her own sort of junk internally about her husband's death. I mean, it was such a huge loss, and she's dealing with it in a number of ways. She's being completely, really hard on her kid. She is separating herself from friends and family. She's not allowing herself to enter into any new relationships. She's really turning inward in her desires and in her understanding of how she's ever going to get past this. And frankly, any of us can understand how this would be a seriously scary situation. One of the things I really appreciated in the movie was how seriously it dealt with that parental struggle to be really harsh with your kids sometimes. I think each one of us, as much as we try to be gentle and faithful parents, at times just feel like snapping because our own desire to serve our own needs, to get our own way, is often stronger than our desire to care for another. And I think this is a universal struggle. We see this original sin not only in Amelia's reaction, but in her son's tendency toward violence, and then also, and I find this really striking, in her community around her rejecting her because she's hard to deal with. And that's something I'd like to talk about a bit. When we see a movie like this, you're dealing with characters that are dealing with the very most difficult aspects of life. And as fellow human beings, it can be just, you don't want to deal with that. You don't want to deal with somebody who is emotionally troubled to the point that they're really going to trouble your life if you bring them in. So I find that fascinating, and it was really dealt with in an interesting way. She visits with her sister one time, and her son, as he's getting bugged and acting out, ends up pushing the little daughter of the really annoying sister of Amelia out the window of her play place and breaking her nose in 2 places. And that's, I find that comes out almost most humorously in the final scene of the movie, where Amelia and her son, after all the stuff of the movie is blown over, are sitting in front of 2 children's services workers, and the son is like, "I'm celebrating my first birthday today." And the mom's like, "That's not true." He's like, "No, this is the first time I've ever celebrated on the day." And then he says, "But my cousin's not coming. I broke her nose in 2 places." And that's so great. Like, each one of us, we've dealt with people in our lives that if they get too close, they're going to hurt you. But the fact is, you're not going to see any healing in themselves or you unless you allow them to get close. And I found that really fascinating. The other thing is, this movie is realistic about the seriousness of sin. The sinful reaction of the mother, spoiler alert, sort of begins to manifest this monster. We're not really clear if this is a malevolent, demonic being external of the family, or if this is really just Amelia's hallucination sort of manifesting itself in a violent reaction toward her son. Needless to say, either way, it is completely terrifying, and this movie provides for some amazing thrills. But so it's worth watching, as I've said before. But that seriousness is manifested in the sense that if this is left unchecked, if her own reaction to her grief is left unchecked and she's only dealing with it on her own, the result is that her son and herself might both die. The third thing is it uncovers spiritual pride. One of the parts that I found interesting at the climax of the movie, she's confronting the monster, and she says, go away, you're not real." And I think this is a very common theme in horror movies, is the tendency to deny the reality of the thing that is really bothering you the most. In Paranormal Activity, you see it where the boyfriend is, oh, it's not real. He can mess around with it and dabble with it because he doesn't think it's a real thing. And of course, he ends up getting the bad end of that in the end of that movie. In The Exorcism of Emily Rose, you have the lawyer who is the unbelieving character and doesn't really believe in the existence of the supernatural. It ends up coming face to face with it. This is a thing that we need to understand, is that not only is the supernatural real, although the supernatural is not really a big aspect of this movie, but our own problems are real things, and we can't deal with them completely. We can't expect them to just go away. I mean, after the first climax where she's tied down in the basement and she's puking up this black stuff and sort of manifesting all the bad stuff that's coming out of her, her son and her go upstairs thinking that it's all over, but the son looks at her and says, "You can't get rid of the Babadook," and he proceeds to get dragged up by the stairs by some invisible force. And I think that's sort of the reality in our lives, is oftentimes we think that we can just get rid of our problems, but our problems actually need to be dealt with. Our problems can't be simply ignored or pretended to be unreal, and that's an amazing thing. The other thing is, this is an interesting social commentary on potentially mental illness. I mean, it could be that this whole episode is sort of a manifestation of mental illness, but I think the social commentary for me really ended up being sort of what I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is we need to be willing to deal with the people that we don't want to deal with, because they're going to be a complete mess. We had some people that were involved in the early days of Liberty Grace Church who used to say, like, each one of us has an invisible trailer load of crap dragging around behind us. And I used to joke that I wanted to make Liberty Grace shirts that said, helping you deal with your invisible trailer load of crap since 2012. And really that's true. It is, the Christian message says that we can deal with that through the atoning work of Jesus. And so a movie like this sort of points you to the fact that, yeah, problems are real. You can't ignore them, and they must be really dealt with. And that was sort of the one thing I was unsure about the end of the movie. In the end of the movie, we find after Amelia confronts the Babadook, the Babadook runs away into the basement. And then the very next scene after that, they've shut the Babadook into the basement, we find Amelia and her son recovering from their injuries that they've inflicted on one another. And they're meeting with child services, and things seem to be going in a positive direction. But they're gathering a bowl of worms, which Amelia then takes down in the basement, tells her son to go away, and kind of calls the Babadook out. The Babadook manifests itself. We don't see it. Amelia goes, "Whoa!" It freaks out, sort of confronts her fears, and then feeds this bowl of worms to her fears. So her issues aren't really dealt with. They're put away or put aside for a time. And I kind of get that. We sort of learn to deal with, or maybe put in proper perspective. She had this great grief, which she was then imposing on her son. whereas that grief needed to have its proper place so that she could properly parent her son. Anyways, fascinating movie. I really encourage you to see it. If you have questions about its content or what's in a movie like this, ask me, message me. You can check it out on IMDb. Many of you won't have a problem with any of that, but I think for Christians who want to seek to grow in holiness and have, we think it's important what goes into our brains and out in our lives. We don't think that's insignificant. So, think about those issues and take a look. Check it out. Talk about it. I'd love to hear your responses. I would love to hear more. I would love to have a further conversation about this. But thanks for listening and have an excellent day. Once again, you've been watching Live in Liberty Village with Nathan Fullerton. Check out my movie review for The Babadook here. Go to see some songs over here. Maybe subscribe on the button down there, the red button. Do that, and we'll see you soon. Have a great one. Bye.